Hello, everybody. We're just right at 7 o'clock. So we're slowly letting our participants in the webinar. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to join us. That's the great thing about a webinar. You can finish your dinner, you can multitask, and still join in. All right, well, we're right at 7:01, and I'm sure people will continue to trickle in. However, we want to be mindful, of course, of your time, and our presenters want to have enough time to get through all of this amazing content that we want to share with you this evening. But I'll start out by just introducing myself. I'm Shelby Gutenberger, and I'm on the referral relations team here at Skyland Trail. And we're so excited you carved some time out, created space for something that I think you'll really enjoy being a part of tonight. And it's great for your personal mental health, maybe your family's mental health, just to learn new skills and new things to apply within your homes. I'm just going to start out. I know a lot of you might know. I know we've got parents on the line, we've got mental health professionals on this webinar, but just wanted to start out by just a quick overview on Skyland Trail. So I'll start with that, and then I'm going to turn it over to Molly Mercer-Dedman, our Director of Education, to introduce our presenters this evening. But first of all, Skyland Trail, we just celebrated our 37th birthday or anniversary. We're a nonprofit. We're here in Atlanta, specifically in Atlanta. And we specialize in treating adults and adolescents with primary psychiatric diagnoses. And we have residential and day treatment programs. We can also support individuals that may have a co-occurring substance use disorder as well. Our adult program, which we're not going to necessarily focus on adults tonight because I know we have a lot of parents in the room. However, it's great for you to know for other family members, for yourself, around the community that we do have an adult program with 4 evidence-based psychiatric recovery teams. That's CBT, DBT, which we're going to highlight tonight, cognition in first episode, psychosis, and social integration. And then dual diagnosis is the overlay there for anyone with a co-occurring substance use disorder. At our adolescent program, where speakers are coming from tonight, we treat ages 14 through 17, and they have a primary mood or anxiety disorder, but they also may have a history of self-harm. A lot of our kiddos may have a primary trauma or PTSD diagnosis, and then they may also have a secondary mild to moderate substance use disorder. It's important to note that yes, we are a residential program, but for either adult or for adolescents, our clients are entering also into day treatment directly as well. So 2 levels of care, and a lot of times that can be step down as well. Lastly, our programs are in network with all private insurances as well as Oscar and TRICARE East. I think a lot of times people think, we're paying out of pocket for services at Skyland Trail, and that is not the case today. And we're grateful for it because the access to our mental health and care has opened up and become much wider for that reason. I'm highlighting 2 things on the screen here about outpatient groups. We're known as residential, as day treatment, but we're also offering these groups, which we're really excited about for teens and parents. So there's a Teen Wellness Academy. There's also a Parenting is a Process group that we're putting together. And Caitlin, that's going to be speaking tonight, is actually running these groups and doing admissions for these groups as we speak. So wanted to highlight that. They're 5-week sessions. And if you'd like to learn more, you can screenshot there at the bottom, skylandtrail.org/outpatient groups. I'm going to turn it over to Molly Mercer-Dedman, our Director of Education and Outreach, and she's going to introduce our presenters.
Thank you so much, Shelby. Hi, everybody. I do want to mention that if you have any questions today, then you can put them in the chat. Hopefully, we'll have a little bit of time at the end to get to those. So just anytime throughout the presentation, feel free to put your questions in there. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our 2 speakers. First off, we have Piper Coffee. Piper is a licensed clinical social worker. She joined Skyland Trail in October of 2020 and serves as our Vice President of Adolescent Clinical Services. She oversees clinical programming for the Adolescent Treatment Program, and Piper brings extensive experience in adolescent residential psychiatric care, including 15 years as operations director at a local psychiatric hospital. Caitlin Connolly is also here with us tonight. Caitlin is a licensed clinical social worker as well, and she's a certified prolonged exposure therapist. She's currently our director of clinical services at the Skyland Adolescent campus. Caitlin has experience in community mental health, corrections-based mental health, trauma-focused care, treatment for co-occurring disorders, and mental health in various educational settings. Caitlin is passionate about working with adolescents and the ever-changing mental health needs of this nation's youth and the impact of substance use in the developing population. Welcome to Piper and Caitlin, and thanks everybody for being here. I'll turn it over to y'all.
Great. Thanks, Molly and Shelby. Welcome, everyone. I'm so happy you're here. Now, it is called DBT Bootcamp for a reason. It means we're going to go really, really quickly, and there's going to be a lot of information. So I know, please keep up, put questions in the chat. And of course, we can always provide information after we finish up. So, in our first boot camp for DBT, what are we going to talk about? Well, what is DBT? Why are we doing this? What is this biosocial model that everybody keeps talking about? And we always are listening to BPD. So, how can we separate those two? Is it always got to be BPD? And what else does it mean? So, when we start looking at DBT, we're also going to look at skills, mindfulness, distress tolerance, emotion regulation, and interpersonal effectiveness. So again, buckle up, get ready, put your shoes on, and let's talk about DBT. You may or may not have heard of it. It is dialectical behavior therapy. It's evidence-based for children, adolescents, and adults. It came from CBT. If you're not used to that yet, Mental Health Loves a good acronym, cognitive behavioral therapy, and which is the focus of balancing acceptance of self and strategies for positive change. So there's that dialectic. So we got two things can be true at the same time, but feel very different. So that's what makes it really challenging at times because it's like, well, how can two totally rad things be the same? And how can I accept it? Because that just doesn't feel normal and comfortable, which is what DBT is really all about, is becoming so much more comfortable at handling and managing those emotions that come along with the dialectic, reducing some high risk behaviors that also may be associated, as well as improving your relationships. So we're going to start, where did this all come from? It's called the biosocial model, and you've probably heard it in some other form or fashion, so it's probably not going to be new, which is great. Really is going to talk about our biology and environment and how it develops and influences our mental illness and emotional sensitivity. I also like to call it our temperament. So way back when, if you're old as me, T. Barry Brazelton, and Dr. Spock, we all learned about temperament. My kid is, he's a prickly pear or is extra sensitive. This is true. It absolutely is true, and it makes a huge difference on how your child handles their emotions, handles situations. So over here to the right, you're going to see the diagram. So you've got all these different things that appear to have no connection, but they really do. So when we talk about your biological vulnerability, how you're made, who you are, and there's nothing wrong with that. Then you're talking about invalidating environment, which may be an environment that doesn't offer the most compassion, support, structure, acceptance. And then you just don't handle emotions really well. And then we add all this together and it just really feeds off of one another. So when you've got that invalidating environment, the individual, kid, adult starts to learn to experience their emotions, but gets this whole idea, I can't trust myself. So even though I've got this emotion, can I trust it and not trust it, which leads again to the dialectic, which can lead to the difficulties with being able to manage that emotion. And therefore, we talk about all the challenges we see externally. So, talk about the biological component real quick. Like, there's our little DNA strand. We always want to talk about that. The helix, I think, is what we call it. Temperament, if we want to call it that too, and just who your kid is and who you are. Some kids are just predisposed to being extra sensitive, extra reactive, not understanding, concrete. We just really have to take some time with explaining things. We can't rush through it. We can't give some very generalized answers. They really struggle with some of those components. So when they don't know what to say or how to say it, it's going to come out in an emotion. And we're like, why do they always feel so intensely about me saying no? Or if a parent doesn't hear them the first time, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat yourself? I always have to repeat myself. I'm so sick of this. You don't ever listen to me. And you're like, how did this become about not listening? Right? So some of that impulsivity, those immediate reactions, and we act like we don't know where they come from, it really throws us off, especially if we're not sure of what is driving that bus. If you have two kids who are totally different, the first kid never acted that way, this kid is acting this way. And again, there is no parent handbook, which is why we're all here together tonight to figure out how we can support one another. So we're looking at high sensitivity. We're also looking at some extreme and some really long-lasting emotional reactions when they become dysregulated.
Yeah. I love what you pointed out, Piper, about the aspect of how you might have multiple children. You might be parenting them the same exact way. They may be being raised in the same home. And it's just like, wait, our first child was completely emotionally regulated and everything was good to go. They knew how to handle hard situations. And our second child, it's just a completely different ball game, and that can be so overwhelming for parents. And so I love that you acknowledge that, and I want to really highlight that for parents too, that it can be very normal. It can be a very appropriate response, and it's just their emotional vulnerability that may be providing a different script for this child.
Well said. Absolutely. So give yourself some grace. Don't automatically assume that you're the worst parent ever because your children are completely different and or you're parenting them differently, which is fine. So we talked about biologics. Now let's talk about our environment. Not an easy environment this day. I think we can all agree on that. There's so much is being said, so much is being presented, so much is available for access, which can be misinterpreted and also lead to those emotions and reactions that are very intense, and we're not sure where they come from, right? So frequencies occurring, they're not really being taught skills. And I don't know about you, but I'm not learning a skill when I'm texting or TikToking or Snapchatting. No skills are being done. Instead, I think less is is happening in those type of environments because fewer characters and you might be doing emojis, you might be doing memes and gifs. And so easily misinterpreted, easily misunderstood. And when you're having a young person who might be extra sensitive, you're not really sure how they're supposed to respond. And then, of course, just this type of day and age, the reactions we're getting online or maybe in person can also lead to those negative beliefs about ourselves and also negative, just overall feeling about who we are and I don't belong. And which cannot make sense to you as a parent. You're like, my kid is great. They're beautiful. You're so smart. You do this so well. But they just don't understand and they're not listening to me. So as a parent, what else am I supposed to do? I tell them all the time. Unfortunately, again, we are not the end all be all, and it requires so much more, which is why we talk about having a team when we're dealing with some mental health challenges and symptoms. Some strategies could be intermittent reinforcement, which is just inadvertent. Like I don't know I'm doing it. I think I'm helping. And, can sometimes also be, negative reinforcement. So I'm giving negative attention to those tantrums by saying, hey, honey, I'm here for you. Let me hug it out. It's going to be okay. Let's do some soothing. Unfortunately, they're pairing those two reactions together. So now they're saying, well, I know that if I really want some attention or I'm really feeling down about myself, if I have a temper tantrum or if I really isolate myself or appear to be down, my mom, dad, co-parent, whomever will come to me and show me what I'm looking for. And so it becomes really challenging to take those two apart because it's going to hurt your heart to say, I cannot go to them in this moment. I have to help them regulate. I have to help them learn resilience and be able to learn to walk through that. In addition, we're tired, we're vulnerable, we got a lot on our plate. Will you just stop crying? Just stop. Just stop. Please, please, I'm begging you to stop, right? So we're oversimplifying and then we might intermittently negatively enforce it by maybe, you know what? If you can just stop crying, I will let you have extra video, extra screen time, whatever, right? So now again, we're pairing some of those behaviors that we really don't even want, but we're not even aware of it happening. And lastly, we might be pathologizing some really normal responses. And this is where we again go back to that biological piece, knowing your kid, knowing that your kid is super sensitive, knowing that your kid has a hard time responding to tone of voice or body language, nonverbals, things of this, and or maybe just the way you respond. And again, It's not easy. There's no handbook, and we're just going to walk through it together.
Absolutely. Something that comes to mind when we talk about environment too is we bring it back to the nature of this presentation in terms of helping parents feel more confident. Even the way parenting your child with your partner or as a co-parent in two different homes, that's also going to be an impact, right, on these developing teens who we're trying to understand their emotions and what's the best response. Parents may not be on the same page of what that even looks like, right? And so we see that all the time, and I want to normalize that and also say, how can we get on the same page, have some adult conversations behind the scenes? So just kind of sprinkling those thoughts in, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in terms of intervention, but just a really good place to kind of tie that in as well when we talk about helping you all feel very confident in your parenting and managing difficult emotions. How can we as adults, as the supporters of these teens, also work on getting on the same page so that the environment is just reinforcing positive change?
Again, thank you so much for adding that piece. And like Caitlin said, we will continue that theme because you need help as well, and we want to normalize it, and we don't want to make it seem like you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. Is you're raising a teen in a really tough environment, and you're learning how to do that on your own. So, what can we learn while we're here? Well, we just talked about the biological and environmental. Be mindful. It's not one or the other, it is both. It also helps us understand why they might seem different from us. So again, talking what Caitlin mentioned, the two different kids, two different parents, and I never acted that way. That's okay. This is the phenom of human beings, right? We're so totally different no matter how alike we think we are. Everybody has a different experience, and we're going to learn to talk about validating those experiences and respecting those experiences, even if they are different from us and we may not have really any idea how they got there. So let's talk about how we can help them change their environment, how we can help accept that, and help everyone learn to manage the differences we are experiencing and bringing to the table. All right. Wow. This looks really impressive and very daunting. I can understand. I'm a
Just
little
a little
overwhelmed.
overwhelming,
It
right?
is. It is. But that just shows
This
you
is
how
life.
much is going on, right? Or it's not as simple as just, oh, early bedtime, like three meals on the table, and there's so much happening. So again, we talked about genetics, we talked about temperament. Let's also look at intergenerational trauma. Let's talk about physical health. Let's talk about neurochemistry, temperance there, well-being, metabolic disorders. So anything that's happening with the health is going to affect your mental health. And that's something we do at Skyland Trail. We really emphasize the importance of holistic care and acknowledging that what you either put in your body, whether it be, food and drinks, as well as how you take care of your body. Are you exercising? Are you resting well? We talk about sleep hygiene quite a bit. And so all of those components are going to add up to how you're going to respond to situations. Then we're going to layer on the social environment, education, socioeconomic status, social support, substance use, what's going on in your life, peer relationships. I think COVID can just go right here and everybody will understand exactly how that influenced, emphasized, magnified what's happening in your world. Whereas before, I think we were just all kind of moving in a way that worked for us or may not have worked, but we were able to manage somehow. COVID highlighted all of these changes, all of these differences, and really just made us put the spotlight on it, which is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time because there was so much stress and everybody went through so much trauma. And I think we're still seeing some of those responses as a result. And so, again, I think it's a good thing in terms of we're able to really talk openly and transparently about mental health and the needs to address coping, social skills, personality, behaviors, self-esteem, emotions. We no longer can separate them. So I think, again, good things bring bad things and bad things bring good things. So I think if we all balance it out, which again, you're going to hear how important it is to maintain a balance.
Absolutely. And I know you've mentioned COVID. I know all these parents are thinking, well, where does social media play a role, right? Because we talk about a vulnerable population who's also developing, and then they have all this external influence on our phones, doing TikTok. And good thing for you guys, we have a presentation coming up later in the year focused solely on social media because that is such a big part of this population's, I would say, struggles to a certain degree, and the environmental impact. So awesome. So setting us up for the ongoing discussion here, Piper. So Piper really did just again, this is boot camp. We're hitting it hard and heavy. Really great overview of what DBT is, what is the purpose of DBT and how we get to the point of, okay, DBT is the right approach for my kid, right? So now we're going to really get into the meat and potatoes of what we want to talk about. How can we get you guys as parents prepared, skilled to be able to support your children who may be struggling with different things like emotional distress, lack of regulating their emotions, maybe some self-confidence issues, motivation issues. Maybe there's some aspects of safety issues with self-harm or suicidality. So moving forward, we're going to talk about a lot of skills that you all can learn as parents, your kids can learn as well, and you guys can practice those together to create some sense of harmony, some safety, stability in your home. So there are 4 modules within DBT. The first one is mindfulness. We're going to look a lot at, just like the term implies, like how can we be more in touch with our sense of self? And then how can we learn to be in the moment, connected with what we're experiencing versus caught up in 75 different places, right? So we're going to talk about distress tolerance. Again, you see the theme here, self-dysregulation. How do we address that there are aspects of our identity and self-disturbance that are contributing to how we handle hard situations, right? Distress tolerance is an amazing skill that even us as adults, right, we struggle to be able to handle hard situations. Throw in a developing brain and peer pressure and puberty, and it's kind of a recipe for disaster sometimes. So distress tolerance is a module that we spend so much time on to help these young people understand their sense of self. We're going to talk about emotion regulation skills. Again, just emotions. What are they? How do we handle them? What do I do with them? The biggest part of that is how do I allow myself to be comfortable being uncomfortable, right? We don't always want to be sad. We don't always want to be anxious. However, can we normalize the experience of having those emotions? And then finally, one of my personal favorite modules within DBT, especially when working with teenagers, is an interpersonal effectiveness. How do we work on engaging with others in, again, our environment more effectively to have more fulfilling relationships and connections with others that can then help create our sense of self, but also just create a sense of confidence and again, reinforce our own emotional awareness. So let's jump into it. The first one is going to be mindfulness. I know there's so much discussion about mindfulness in so many different areas of life, different modalities of therapy, but mindfulness is just that. How do we allow ourselves to be in the moment? How do we learn to observe, describe, and participate? And that is how DBT really focuses on being mindful, right? So some of the things we're working with our teens on is just observing, right? If I'm sitting here and I'm giving you all this presentation and I am, thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner after this, or I have to walk my dog and pay the bills, I might be a little distracted, right? So what we want to do is how can I help myself be centered and be present? And when we're having someone who's dealing with really big emotions, it's allowing ourselves to sit and notice our body sensations, simply just observing our experience without providing judgment or having a reaction, right? We want to notice our emotions and our thought processes. And then we want to not push anything away, right? Because when we say things like, oh man, I'm noticing I'm feeling anxious right now, I shouldn't feel anxious. I need to stop feeling anxious. That's a judgment, right? So the first step we're going to do, we want to practice observing. The next step is going to be describing. How can I describe and share what I'm actually experiencing? That doesn't necessarily always mean it's with somebody, but it can be really helpful to say out loud what you're experiencing. So if you're feeling anxious, I encourage the teens I work with all the time. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed and you're trying to practice your describe skill, go to a space that's by yourself. Or maybe when you're in the shower, practice these skills. Like I'm noticing that I'm feeling relaxed. I notice that I'm feeling really frustrated. And saying it out loud to allow yourself to have that space and that confidence to say these things, because it can be very cathartic to even just speak these words into existence. Labeling what you observe, describing what's experiencing, the who, what, when, and where. What are the facts, right? Not a judgment, but the facts of the situation. And then remembering that if you can't observe it through your senses, you can't describe it, right? So being able to use our senses as a way of describing what we're experiencing. And then finally is
Oh,
participation.
can I go back to
Oh,
describe? I'm
yeah,
so
I'm so
sorry.
sorry.
Go ahead.
This is really important, and I'm sure everybody's like, well, so what? What if I describe it? So a couple examples. Commuting. As an adult, we're all commuting, we're sitting in traffic. Atlanta traffic is the worst. So we're experiencing some anxiety. We might be getting late somewhere. Oh my gosh, I might not be making it on time. That's anxiety. And by sitting in the car and saying it out loud, first of all, you're validating your feeling. You're not poo-pooing it, or you're not going, this happens every day. So you're allowing yourself to feel normalized in your feeling. You're validating your feeling. You're saying it out loud. You're noticing it. You're describing it. You're observing it. So those shoulders may come down. The heart rate will come down, like Caitlin was talking. We have a young person who came back from being in an inpatient setting, and one of their skills is journaling. And the way they describe it is I'm able to take all these thoughts that are in my head, I put them on paper, I can see them, I can say them, I can share them, and it gets out of here and it gets on here. And so, therefore, she's able to describe it, observe it, and then also she can really take a lot of this out of the body and it's out in front of her as opposed to all holding tight. So yeah, thank you, Caitlin. Let me for jumping in there on that one.
Oh, absolutely. That was such a good example. I think that it's important for us to be able to put these skills, these concepts to real life practice, right? So if it's an activity your teen likes to do, how can we just encourage them to practice their describe skill while they are maybe going for a run, doing some artwork, maybe playing with the dog. All of these opportunities to be present and mindful, just like Piper said, are going to take us back to validating our experiences and our emotions. And that takes us to participate, throwing ourselves into new experiences and just doing the thing. We have a lot of that knee-jerk reaction to just stop ourselves like, oh, but wait, I want to think about this in depth. I want to overanalyze the situation. There's that anxiety, right? Allow ourselves to become one with what we're doing. And I love doing this with teens and making them so uncomfortable with like, let's try something different. Let's do a presentation for some people. Let's go talk to this new person and share an interesting topic with them, right? Do what is needed in the moment and go with the flow and respond with spontaneity. I think that's something that young people can really benefit from, especially when we talk about dealing with anxiety and depression, right? When we're so caught up with thoughts in our brain, it can be really helpful to kind of just allow ourselves to just throw ourselves into the deep end and to try something new. Again, reinforcing through this whole process of observe, describe, and participate that it's all about being in connection with our emotions and understanding that our experiences are valid. So we want to talk about, there's also the aspect of our how mindfulness skills. So again, the thing about DBT that I love is it is not rocket science, right? It's really the basics and really reminding ourselves that we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do something different, right? So again, when we're being mindful, we're being non-judgmental. We're not seeing things as good or bad. We're accepting the moment for what it is. We're acknowledging what is helpful, what is not in this moment. And then we're allowing ourselves to enact our values, our wishes, our beliefs. And that's a great way to, again, reinforce that sense of self that we've been talking about. We always encourage individuals to practice one mindfully. So again, being present in the moment, doing one thing at a time, right? I know I have 75 things to do, but I'm going to allow myself in the next 10 minutes to just focus on this one activity, which is maybe it's my science homework. Maybe it's my journaling that I want to do each day. Again, how am I just being completely present? This is a great thing to practice with your kids because how do we mirror positive behaviors and being mindful, right? I love when you go to restaurants and you see everyone's on their phone, right? Like mom, dad, all the kids on their phone. How do we mirror different behaviors where it's like as a family, once a day we sit down for 10 minutes and we journal, or we do some maybe calm breathing skills. I know it sounds a little interesting for some people, but it's a really great strategy. And then also we want to talk about practicing mindfulness in an effective way. We want to be effective. We don't want to do it just to check a box. Are we being mindful of what we're trying to achieve in our goals? We want to do the things that work and not just doing it for the sake of, oh, I did my skills. That's something that I love teaching young people and well, teaching in therapy in general is the aspect of therapy as a process. And we don't want to just do things because people, your therapist told you, hey, here's these 5 skills, go use them. Well, what if they don't work? What if they're not helpful for you? So we want to be skillful and we want to let go of willingness. We want to be able to just allow ourselves to throw ourselves into the deep end. And then this is the last piece of mindfulness that we'll talk about before we move into the next module. We want to talk about the fact that there are three states of mind that in which we evaluate situations, right? So we have our rational mind. It's also called our reasonable mind. This is also called our logical mind sometimes, right? Where we want to focus on what are the facts, what is logic telling me, but this is what the data says, this is the statistics, right? All things that can serve us really well. However, we could see how this may lead to some potential minimization of feelings, pushing off our feelings, numbing ourselves sometimes to emotions, again, because we're rationalizing a situation, even when maybe it's unacceptable, right? One of my favorite examples, Piper, we've probably heard this a million times, is, well, I screamed and yelled at her because I don't respect her because she wasn't respecting me. Or I want to punch her in the face because she said she was going to punch me in the face, right? The facts are there, right? She told me this and I responded with this. So we can see that's still not effective, right? That's still not a reasonable response to life. We have to still learn to be respectful and kind. The other side of things is our emotional mind. When we talk about being very reactive, very impulsive, wanting to hurt people who hurt you, and then we talk about acting on urges, right? Like I just did it. Um, that is that emotional mind of like being really angry and punching a wall, whether it's being really, angry that you have these chores and screaming and yelling out your mom, right? The wise mind, however, is in that middle, right? We want to take both our logic and our emotions into account. There's that dialectic that Piper taught us about, right? And we want to see that there are multiple perspectives within a situation. We don't have to jump from one side to the other because extremes never serve us well, right? We talk about walking that middle path, which is our wise mind. So, again, a great strategy to kind of encourage discussion when we're working with teens about kind of breaking things down with your emotion mind, your rational mind, and then finding that middle path within your wise mind.
Thank you, Caitlin. A lot going on, but it's all going to layer and again, it's not rocket science. It just feels rocket science because it's just new terms. But you guys are doing this every day. And when you're talking about mindfulness and you're talking about wise mind and reasonable mind and all, those are things that adults go through as well. So as a parent, you can also be working on that in your relationship with your partner, because sometimes you might be the emotional one, and that might be the I'm the reasonable one, the rational, and then you somehow you got to compromise. But you both need to talk about how can we bring this together and recognize that not one or the other is right. But again, the dialectic, like Caitlin was saying, and we have kids who say, well, you know what? There is no reason for me to go back to school because I'm just going to fail anyway, and I'm failing now. So, and you know what? I don't even need a high school diploma to get my job. My job, I'm going to be a fry cook for the rest of my life. And so again, there's this whole idea, I'm not going to do anything, but how do we bring them together to be able to see two viewpoints, which is very uncomfortable. So we're not comfortable. We're in distress. What are we going to do about distress? I want to feel it. So we're going to talk about some tolerance skills as we layer onto the mindfulness. So we're mindful that we need to be thinking about what's happening as we're having extreme emotions. Whew. Okay, so we've been working on our body, we've been observing, we're describing, we're participating, we're still distressed. So let's focus on acceptance. All right, again, we talked about normalizing our feelings. Definitely don't want to poo-poo ourselves. Why do you react this way? You always do this. God, it's so silly. I mean, let it go. It's no big deal. How many times have we heard this from anybody and everybody? And sometimes that comes out of our mouth to our kids. And unfortunately, they are not there yet, either experience, biological, environmental, to even understand it's no big deal because to them, their world is as big as a fishbowl and it is a big deal. So we're going to talk about those kind of skills for parents a little bit later. But let's talk about how you can focus on acceptance and talk about how we can utilize those strategies during the difficult moments without having to be impulsive or harmful. When we're working with our teens, we get parents who are coming in walking on eggshells. Read the book. If you haven't checked it out, check it out because they're acting in fear. Totally normal. I understand it because there has been some really scary moments. So we got to get strategies on how to help our teen deal with difficult moments, feel those intense emotional pain without resorting to safety behaviors. How do we write it out? How do we not follow through? Oh, you're good. Keep going. All right. So here's all these skills. I'm telling you, these kids are learning lots of stuff, and it happens for parents too. All of our parents are learning skills. We talk about this openly in family therapy. Tip is one of our kids' favorites. Temperature, intensity, all these other things. I can't remember them all. Improve, accepts, pros and cons are one of our favorites. Kids hate it, so do it often. Radical acceptance, we all know what that looks like. Opposite action. So if I want to go run in the street, what would be the opposite action? I will stay right here. I know that's very simplified. We'll get to that. And then we talked about self-soothing with senses. Again, you're going back to what Caitlin was first talking about. What are you noticing? What are you seeing?
And as you mentioned before, DBT loves an acronym, so everything is going to be in an acronym.
Yes. And sometimes it can be really hard. And parents, I give it up to you. You're going to have to kind of walk with your kid and hear all of these acronyms. And sometimes it's a really good opportunity for kids to teach you, right? And it helps them practice the verbiage as well as to say, no, let's do it together. Let me show you how I do it, right? And we often ask that. We ask, we talk about let's practice 5 skills, and we may get a call. I've done all the 5 skills that don't work. So we go back and say, well, I need you to do each skill. Let's self-soothe for the five senses, and let's do it for 5 minutes each before we say it doesn't work or we give up on this skill. So let's look at a picture that makes you happy. Go to a room where there's low light. Look at nature. Listen to soothing music, humming. Also, some guided meditations. Use your favorite soap, smells. For me, smells are very soothing as well as evoking. So, I mean, something that if you know this scent is really going to allow you to, boom, allow you to be in the moment, practice your breathing, let everything go, describe, observe, then do it, right? Eat one of your favorite foods, drink a favorite drink, hot, cold flavored water, pet your stuffed animal. Caitlin talked earlier when we talked about the whole biologic, environmental, being in the moment. Sometimes when you're petting your favorite pet, dog, animal, cat, bird, what have you, just the process of doing that is a soothing skill. And we don't know that we're doing it. So this is really about acknowledging and bringing it to the forefront. I am actually doing a self-soothing skill in the moment. So, imagery, meaning, prayer, relaxation, bring your attention to one thing in the present moment. When you are overwhelmed, 75 things like Caitlin's doing, whew, just focus on one thing. Just one thing. Block it out. We oftentimes say, okay, put your feet on the floor, hands on your knees, close your eyes, butt in your chair. What is happening to each of your limbs? Tell me what you're feeling in your feet. Tell me what you're feeling in your bottom, your back. Or what are you hearing? So by really sitting there and focusing on the present moment, it almost allows you to let it go, recenter, and remind yourself that you can do this and it doesn't have to be such an intense reaction. Take a vacation, give yourself a mental break. A lot of our kids in our learning lab will do 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off. Because again, we recognize that everyone's different and not everyone can plow through with some of these lessons and groups and things of this nature, which is okay. Everybody learns differently. And the majority of our kids are trying to almost relearn everything. And we want to teach them in a way that they're going to have a positive experience and not to give up on it. Encourage, encourage, encourage yourself. Remind yourself of your past successes. List your strengths. Self-talk is always helpful. We've heard it before, and we're going to tell you again, don't discount it. This is our kids' favorite, as you can imagine. Can I get an ice cup? Can I do this? And we always say there's more than just the temperature. Let's talk about intense exercises. So I know when I get a phone call and they say, oh, Sarah has tried all these things. I go, Sarah, what have you tried? I held an ice cube. Okay, I said, have you done any jumping jacks? Have you done any push-ups? Have you walked, have you done some speed walking? Have you done your paced breathing? Have you done progressive muscle relaxation? And sometimes they'll say yes, and then I ask to do it with them. And by doing it with them, it reminds them of it's slow and steady wins the race, as opposed to, I'm done. I'm gonna faint because I just sat there and blew out all my air and I had no idea what I'm doing. So again, practice with them is great. Role modeling is great. Mirroring, like Caitlin was saying. Again, just checking with them that allows them to give them an opportunity to be successful with a skill instead of going to the old way, the quote unquote easy way, and easy just means habit, right? It's just the habit of doing it and avoiding those intense emotions. Another one is stop. Pause in your tracks, do not react. Try not to let those emotions get a hold of you. Take a step back, going back to observe again, right? So this again, we're layering everything on top of each other, and they're not all separate, they're all coming together. What is actually happening inside of me? What's happening around me? Attempt to zoom out, see the bigger picture. Is it just right here, or are there other things going on? And then you're going to proceed mindfully. Again, what were some of those mindful options and exercises and skills that we talked about that will allow you to be addressing the distress in the moment? All right, Caitlin, take it away.
Sorry, couldn't find my mute button. All right, emotion regulation skills. One of our parents in our program's favorite topic. Again, how do I help my kids understand and regulate their really hard emotions? Um, so I love this picture, and one of the Piper, was this you or Brielle that came up with this? One of you guys came up with this, and it's just, was it you?
Yeah, I did it for we did it. Yes. I thought it was so perfect to talk about how we're feeling and give everybody a visual.
Absolutely, yes. So emotion dysregulation is where our nervous system is completely overwhelmed. So even going back to our distress tolerance skills, right? Tip, doing some physical interactions is going to help jolt our body, jolt our nervous system, and create a physiological change to help us manage emotions more effectively. The body is a really cool thing. But when we think about emotion dysregulation, thinking about it that your feelings are coming out wrong sized, right? So I love this picture of the ghost where it's just like spewing out everywhere, right? And Johnny may be feeling like, well, I just told you how I was feeling, but you experienced it as this complete meltdown, this complete tantrum. And that for Johnny might be normal in terms of what they're experiencing inside, right? So we're through emotion regulation skills, we're helping kids to learn how to kind of nicely package their emotions, right? No emotion's gonna fit into the same size box, right? However, how can we be able to express our emotions in ways that are more effective and get our needs met in more constructive ways? So all of the models are going to teach us how our emotions work, right? But these skills are really intended to help us to manage these emotions. When I'm feeling really sad, how can I feel my sadness and cope with it, right? There's that dialectic, right? So sometimes when I'm having one of my moods and I'm feeling sad, I would turn on Adele and it's just going to make me feel more sad, right? Sometimes that's beautiful. And how long do I want to stay in that moment or in that time of being really sad? Do I want to perpetuate my sadness or do I want to try to find a way to move through that sadness? So we want to be able to work towards reducing our vulnerability to negative emotions, right? So I start my day off, I'm having a rough day. If I go and put Adele on, is that going to increase my vulnerability to some intense emotions or decrease it, right? Probably going to increase my experience with some negative emotions. So setting myself up for success versus failure. And then we want to challenge myths that interfere with our emotion regulation. A great example of that is emotions are really stupid. Ugh, I should not feel this way. Shoulds are a huge, huge, huge challenge and something we have to be mindful of. Yes, we may feel this way sometimes, and sometimes emotions are there for a reason. Emotions are just like we talk about pain tells us something's wrong. Our emotions are telling us about our experience with the world. So again, we got some more acronyms for you guys. And one thing I will say is we are going to share you guys will have access to the presentation. And if you go on the wonderful Google or whatnot, YouTube, there's a lot of really great videos out there that talk about these skills in depth as well. So I don't want you to feel like you're having to write every single thing down, but these are just really great skills to be able to practice. So ABC skills. So there's ABC and please, they kind of go hand in hand. So accumulating positive emotions. So this comes on hand in hand of how are we acquiring positive experiences that you can kind of file away for later. I like to think of it as like a filing cabinet, right? Sometimes we don't need those bad emotions, so we can put them back in the filing cabinet, and we might need to pull one of those other ones out, right? Like I remember when I went on a family trip and I saw this beautiful sunrise, and it made me feel content and it made me feel at peace. Can I pull that up and remind myself that I have had positive emotions and positive experiences in really dark times. Build mastery. So how can I do something every day that makes me feel confident? Even if it's something like waking up every day and making your bed, waking up every day and doing your hygiene, right? We're not talking about going and building a treehouse every day. It could be those small things that help people feel more confident and successful. And then coping ahead. This is a beautiful skill. We do cope ahead plans for almost everything. It could be going back to school. It could be having a hard conversation with mom and dad, breaking up with a partner. Oh gosh, the worst, right? How can we help ourselves be successful in the future for a situation we know we might face? So, coping ahead is just creating a plan of some things we can rehearse and practice to set ourselves up for success when we know we might be dealing with some big emotions. Then we talk about please. So please is again, you can see there's a lot of physical components that are tied into DBT because of that holistic approach of DBT and the intersection between our physical health and our mental health. So please focuses a lot more on kind of that physical component of what are we doing to engage in physical health? Are we being active, or are we just laying in our bed and bed rotting all day? Are we eating well? Are we making sure we're having breakfast? Are we making sure we're drinking water, right? Are we treating our body well to hopefully have some potentially positive outcomes? Avoiding mood altering substances. So again, this goes back to when maybe some people are having a hard day for us, for adults, and it's like, man, I'm ready for my glass of wine. Is that the best coping strategy for a hard day, right? This goes to kids and to young people, right? That if I am feeling depressed and anxious, is maybe using marijuana or alcohol going to be the best effect on my mood at this time? Sleep well, sleep hygiene is something we talk extensively about in mental health because the better our sleep is, the better it's going to impact our mood and our productivity, which again, creating healthy cycles. And then finally, exercise, getting out and being physically active, increasing endorphins to alleviate stress. So one of the things our kids do in our program is they have a healthy challenge group where everyone has different physical abilities, right? So, but how do we find our strengths so that we can then be active in some way, shape, or form to improve our mental health? So again, when we're experiencing strong emotions, we want to check the facts. We want to look at what is actually going on here. Am I using my emotion mind or my rational mind to navigate a situation? Can we problem solve? Is the impulsive emotion-based thought that came to my mind the true solution? Are there some other solutions that I can assess here? And then opposite actions, kind of Piper mentioned this too when we were talking about distress tolerance. What can I do differently than I would have done in a situation um, that may be more effective, right? So again, these are great strategies to do, to talk through with your kids, to reflect on situations, and to be able to have a more effective outcome in the future. All right, Piper.
Okay, I know. We're hustling. Again, here's boot camp, interpersonal effectiveness. This is probably where a lot of you guys are waiting. Like, why'd you save the best for last? How do we get along with others in a constructive way? Okay, let's talk about what our goals are and let's talk about what our skills. In order to build strong relationships, new relationships, and end relationships that are not that are unhealthy or toxic, we got to be able to have some skills, right? Otherwise, we're going to repeat the pattern. We're going to keep going on, and we're going to be stuck with the same people over and over again. Then we're going to resent ourselves, on and on and on. Focus on communication, empathy, and how do I resolve conflict in a way that feels good for me and for the other person so I don't engage in some of those unsafe behaviors. Here we go. Again, has anybody been counting how many acronyms we have? This is pretty amazing. Fast skills. Give the fast skill. Give them fast. Give. So be gentle. Show your interest by actively listening. This is hard for parents. Put everything down, eye contact, and listening does not mean hearing. Okay? I hear you. I hear you. I'm still talking. Listening means actually being in the moment and leaning in. Validate. It's a tough word. Validate the person's feelings, wants, and opinions by saying it back to them. Validate does not mean you're giving in, you're giving up, you're losing power, you're losing control. It is allowing them in the moment to feel the way they're feeling. Doesn't mean you agree either. Okay? Also, use an easy manner. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be role modeling and mirroring how we'd like to see ourselves being treated, right? So if I can come to you and I can have a pretty even tone, I can show some validation, I can lean in, then they're going to respond to that in a positive way. Because typically, when we're going into a really an uncomfortable situation, we're all geared up, right? And I'm ready to meet the energy where the energy is. You got to change the energy. You can do this through the give skill. In addition, let's be fair. No apologies. I don't know if you ever watch anything on television, you see people cry. What do they always say after they're crying? I'm sorry. I'm like, why are we saying I'm sorry? Why are we doing that? It's okay for you to cry. I mean, you're talking about someone you just lost. Please cry, right? Stick to your values. This is a tough one when you're in relationships and you have to end something, right? It might be something that's been going on for 50 years. It might be a brand new one and you're really excited about it. Maybe they'll change. Let's go back to self-respect, stick to your values, and be truthful. Okay? It's an opportunity to get one life, be truthful. Dear man, our kids do dear mans all the time, especially when they want something, and we want them to actually go through each letter and tell me D. So I got a kid, did a dear man, three people came to me today. They want an early discharge. I said, talk to me. So they want to describe to me, use the facts, don't talk about feelings and things. And I believe and I think, give me the facts. Then express yourself in a way that's professional and personal, not just, oh, Caitlin said I should be discharged or everybody else is being discharged. I should discharge. A, assert those facts that you want to see. I want to be discharged because I would like to go to school and I would like to practice the skills. You see what I'm saying? Reinforce it. So instead of insulting me, saying, Piper, you're so mean, you're so stupid, you don't even know what you're doing, reward them. Okay. Say, hey, I hear you need from me reasons for discharge. So I want to give that to you. And or tell me what more you might need so I can make sure I'm expressing myself. And be mindful, right? Don't get sidelined. Don't let the old past say, oh, it doesn't matter, it's gonna suck, I'm not gonna get it. Say, you know what, I'm gonna be mindful today and I'm gonna be observant and I'm gonna describe the way I feel and I'm ready to go in. And then appear and act confident goes right there with that one, is again, we're flowing in and negotiate. So when this young person came to me and did the Dear Man, they also have to talk about what's going to happen if they don't get everything they want. They might get 20%, they might get a little of this. What are you going to do? How are you going to negotiate? And how are you going to accept the negotiation?
I love Dear Man because it helps you prepare to have hard conversations and it allows us to have hard conversations and not be afraid of them, right? I think that's such a good skill for us to practice for so many reasons. And you have a guide, so why not, right?
Yeah, let's challenge everyone tonight to go, after you end this conversation, go into a Dear Man for whatever, whether you want to ask for a raise, ask for time off, you know, what have you. Oh my goodness, behavior chain. Kaylin, I'm going to turn that over to you because I haven't actually had to do one. So I only heard about them, which I think I love a behavior chain
Absolutely.
analysis. So go ahead, Caitlin.
Absolutely. So the behavior chain analysis, this is something that we do when we identify of someone who has engaged in a behavior that they're trying to change, right? And we're not going to sit here and shame or guilt someone, but we want to understand why did we get to the point of having this behavior, right? So what are my vulnerability factors, the prompting event, thoughts, emotions, and body sensations that led to the action, i.e. the ineffective behavior that we're trying to change? And how can I explore the potential consequences of this? So what this is a snapshot in time of, okay, I maybe self-harmed or I threw a chair at a wall. Let me take a moment and reflect on how I even got there and what's the potential consequences of me continuing this behavior. So it's a really great breakdown, helping people to be accountable, to be reflective on how these situations come to be and where we can then break that chain, right? And do something different. If it's always the fact that, I have these negative thoughts that really spiral me into these negative behaviors, well, what can I do to challenge those thoughts? If it's the emotions, same thing. So that was a quick and dirty overview of behavior chain analysis, but it's a great skill. It's a great tool to keep in your back pocket if your kids are engaging in any behaviors that you want to see changed. The last part, I know we have a few minutes. I want to make sure we touch base on this and see if we have some time for questions. So we'll go through this part quickly. But there's four main strategies for change: validation, reinforcement, shaping, boundaries, and consequences. So this is really your behavior modification 101. So starting with validation, right? There's both verbal and functional validation. Validation is creating a space that you are acknowledging what someone is experiencing. We do not validate the invalid, right? Just because somebody says, well, that's how I feel, that's what's happening, you can acknowledge that, and we can provide a different aspect or alternative that may be more rational or excuse me, mindful. So verbal validation is just like it says, using words to acknowledge and accept someone's feelings and experiences. Functional is taking action to demonstrate that. So putting words into practice. This is so important for you all as parents. Yes, I can sit here and say, I understand that when I yell at you, it makes you feel scared. So what am I going to do as your parent to work on not yelling when we're having conversations, right? When we talk about validation as well, we want to talk about reflecting feelings. It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated right now. We want to acknowledge perspectives, normalize that we're going to have different perspectives, right? It makes sense that you're feeling disappointed about that, right? Just like the discharge Piper was talking about, it really makes sense that you're disappointed that you're not going to discharge early. And using I statements, we don't want to speak for each other. We want to allow ourselves to express our emotions and our experience in that moment. And then we continue with the functional aspect of validation, taking action, actually doing what you say you're going to do, providing those nonverbal cues, using body language, having that eye contact, putting your phone down, using a supportive tone, and then also providing small actions. Is it a hug? Is it grabbing someone's hand, a comforting touch, or a thoughtful gesture? Those things can go a really, really long way to help people be able to feel validated. One of the things we want to talk about when we talk about strategies for change, what does the person need, right? Do you need validation, or do you like some solutions, or would you just like some empathy, right? So as what someone asked us, like, well, what do I do in situations? Well, let's just ask, what do you need right now? Do you need some validation? Do you want me to give you some solutions, or do you just want me to just give you a hug and provide you some emotional feedback? Then we're going to talk about reinforcement. This is both the positive and negative reinforcement of how we want to encourage behavioral change. Positive reinforcement is going to be that praising someone for doing well, giving yourself a reward or completing a goal. Negative reinforcement is going to be we're taking something away. Buckling your seatbelt to stop the beeping sound, right? That's a really good example of that. Positive reinforcement, this can be both good and bad, right? So if you're giving a kid a lollipop for screaming in the grocery store, you're just reinforcing that behavior. If you give a kid a high five and say, great job for getting an A on a test, that's going to make them more motivated to get that A on that test, right? So reinforcement is going to be that what are you prepared to do to shape this behavior, which Piper is going to talk to us about here in just a second.
Thank you. So again, reinforcement then leads to shaping. You want to break down some of those behaviors into smaller steps and reinforce each step. And this is important when you want to change something that's really, really hard, ingrained, very habitual. You can't just, ride a horse today. I'm going to go out, I'm going to ride a horse. I'm going to speak Spanish automatic without having done anything in between. So I want to identify the target behavior. I really want my kid to stop laying down on the ground and screaming. Okay, break it down. Very similar to the behavior chain analysis. What is happening that leads up to this target behavior? Reinforce each step that you want to see. Okay, these are choices that you have. So they do X, Y, and Z. You really want to reinforce X. That's what you're going to pay attention to. You're going to ignore Y and Z. So every time X happens, boom, validate, validate. We're going to ignore Y and Z. So the kid and the child and the parent, your co-parent, your partner, they're all going to recognize, ooh, I think I've got their attention when I'm doing X, not Y and Z. And then, of course, we're going to gradually increase the difficulty. So we're starting with, I don't want him to lay down on the ground and scream in the store. Now I don't want to lay down on the ground and scream at my mom's house. All right, that's a real hard place because my mom will reinforce them, but I don't want that to happen. So again, you're breaking down each step, you're reinforcing the step that you want to see, and therefore it will stop reinforcing the whole laying down to get my needs met. Boundaries and consequences, we hear it all the time. See, there's that prickly pear right there. Respect my boundaries, but don't. Hey, hey, okay, got it. Consequences are a natural part of setting boundaries and observing limits. Kids need them, kids want them. They're not going to tell you, but I do think they do tell you externally. Their behaviors are telling you that I need you to tell me that I'm safe and I'm okay. I need you to be the bad guy. I need you to set a limit. I need a consequence because I don't know what the heck I'm doing, right? So DBT allows people to be mindful of their limitations and limitations of others. None of us are perfect. And that's okay. That we go in with some of that mindset of, well, I'm worthless, but they're great. Again, the dialectic, okay? Let's check those facts. How does DBT use those consequences? We're going to allow natural consequences. If you are not going to study, then you could possibly not do well, which then means that you are now grounded forever and ever, ever. Just kidding. You're grounded for this evening. And make sure we're going to communicate those consequences. Nobody can read your mind. And I love it when parents go, well, they should know. They obviously don't know because they may not have done it or they asked you what was going to happen. So again, we don't want to assume. Let's make sure everybody knows up front what those consequences are going to look like. And like Caitlin was saying, consider the other person's needs. Have we ever asked them what they need? We're just jumping right in and going to fix it. Let's find out. And we always need a balance. Balance is the key. That is what this is always going to be about. And then by having boundaries with consequences creates that balance. You're setting those boundaries to make sure you can have your inner peace and your self-respect. And then you can also set those boundaries even when it's hard. And you've shown yourself that you can do it when it's hard. And so therefore you're boosting your self-esteem and you're increasing the chances of repeating that positive pattern and positive relationships going forward.
Whew, we made it.
Boot camp done.
I'm
Great
exhausted.
job, y'all. Yeah, that was definitely a boot camp. Lots of info, great info. We have time for just one question. I'm mindful that it's right around 8. One question. If there's a really high, intense emotional moment, your kid's high, you're feeling really emotional, everybody's up there. What's one strategy, quick strategy that we could use just to kind of take it down a notch that would be helpful for both the parent and the child in that moment?
The first thing I would recommend is if we can take a moment to just physically step away. If it's necessarily, maybe it's a different room, maybe it's even just a few feet away from each other, turning our backs to each other, and taking a nice deep breath, doing some of that paced breathing, progressive muscle relaxation. How can I physically calm my body? That's going to be an immediate jolt to our nervous system again to create us a little more of a calm space, but also, getting away from one another for a moment to literally just like change our scenery. Because all right now I'm seeing red. I just need to see something different to reset my mind and to do something different. Piper, what would you add?
Absolutely. And I would say, also want to make sure that you know that this doesn't mean that you're failing. It's a failure. You're not communicating. By stepping away and recognizing how you're feeling is probably the best thing in terms of skill level. And saying, I know that right now is not the best time, doesn't mean you're not going to go back to it. So
Absolutely.
again, I think by just recognizing what you're feeling and putting something in place, which is what this entire thing is about.
Yep. Let's take 5. Verbalizing that and then doing it. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you both so much. I'm going to pass it over to Shelby to close us out tonight.
Yeah. Thank you all so much, Piper, Caitlin. Thank you all for creating space in your schedule. You showed up. Congratulations. You did it. We really appreciate you being with us tonight. This isn't the last one. We're actually doing a series. So we have 2 more coming up, one in August that's going to be back to school themed, one in November that's going to be focused more on technology, the big buzzy technology talk. So yeah, we'd love for you to join us another time. Reminder on these outpatient groups. And we just appreciate you all being with us. We'll hopefully see you next time. Take care, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
night.
everyone. Have a
Thank
good night.
you.
Bye, everyone.